The stars had lost their beauty somewhere between the third year of silence and the moment Captain Dane Prescott realized he might be the last human alive in this sector. His reflection in the viewport showed a man carved from exhaustion, beard grown wild, eyes that had seen too much darkness to ever fully close again. The warship beneath his boots, the Crimson Valkyrie, hummed with a patient violence, waiting for orders that might never come. 6 cycles had passed since Earth Command went silent. 6 cycles since the treaties collapsed and the galaxy fractured into 1,000 bleeding wounds. Dane had stopped counting days after the first year. Time became meaningless when every morning looked identical to the last, when every scan showed nothing but empty space and distant dying stars. But today was different. The sensor array pinged with a clarity that made his spine straighten. Not the usual cosmic debris or rogue asteroid. This was deliberate. This was artificial. This was alive. Display signature, he muttered to the ship's system, his voice rough from disuse. The holographic display materialized before him, painting the darkness with lines of light and data. What he saw made his breath catch in his throat. The ship approaching wasn't human. The angular design, the biomechanical fusion of metal and something that pulsed like living tissue, the energy readings that defied every law of physics humanity had mapped. This was Kethren, the same species that had glassed 3 colony worlds before the treaties were signed. The same species that humanity had fought to a bloody stalemate in the border wars. The same species that wasn't supposed to be here, in neutral space, armed and scanning his ship like prey. Dane's hand moved to the weapons console, muscle memory from another life taking over. The Crimson Valkyrie was a relic from the war, built when humanity still believed it could win through firepower alone. Every system on board was designed for one purpose: overwhelming destruction. Railguns that could punch through planetary shields, plasma torpedoes that burned at temperatures hotter than most stars, point defense systems that could track and eliminate hundreds of incoming threats simultaneously. He had hoped never to use them again. The Kethren vessel, sleek and predatory, closed the distance with unsettling speed. Its hull shimmered with an adaptive camouflage that made it difficult to track visually. But Dane's targeting systems had no such limitations. Red markers bloomed across his display, highlighting weak points in the alien ship's armor, calculating firing solutions, predicting evasive maneuvers. A communication request flashed across his console. Audio only. No visual feed. Dane hesitated. Every instinct screamed at him to fire first, to eliminate the threat before it could strike. But something held him back. Perhaps it was curiosity. Perhaps it was the desperate hope that not every encounter had to end in blood. He accepted the connection. The voice that emerged from the speakers was filtered through a translator, mechanical and cold, but the contempt in it needed no translation.
Human vessel.
You drift in territorial space claimed by the Kethren Ascendancy. By treaty law, you are trespassing. Power down your weapons and prepare to be boarded. Dane's jaw tightened. Territorial space. The audacity of it burned in his chest. This sector had been neutral ground for 5 years, guaranteed by the Perseus Accord. But if Earth Command was gone, if the human fleets had scattered or been destroyed, then perhaps the treaties meant nothing anymore. Perhaps the galaxy had moved on, carving up the ruins of human space like scavengers picking at bones. This sector is neutral, Dane replied, his voice steady despite the rage building inside him. Under the Perseus Accord, neither human nor Kethren vessels may claim territory here. I suggest you review your star charts and move along. Static filled the line for a moment, then something that might have been laughter, wet and clicking. The Perseus Accord is dead, human. Your species honored it with lies and broken promises. We honor it not at all. You have 2 minutes to comply. After that, we will take your ship by force and leave your corpse for the void. The connection severed. Dane stared at the display, watching the Kethren vessel adjust its trajectory, weapons ports opening like hungry mouths. 2 minutes. They had given him 2 minutes to surrender everything, to become a prisoner in a war that never truly ended, only paused long enough for both sides to reload. He thought of the crew he had lost. Engineer Rodriguez, who could coax life from dying systems with nothing but spare parts and stubborn pride. Navigator Chen, who had guided them through ion storms that should have torn the ship apart. Dr. Ose, who had fought for every life in the medical bay even when the wounds were beyond saving. They were gone now, casualties of the same conflict that had hollowed out the galaxy and left survivors like Dane drifting in the wreckage. They had trusted him to bring them home. He had failed, but he would not fail them again by surrendering to the same species that had taken so much from humanity. Dane's fingers moved across the console with practiced precision. Shields to maximum, weapon systems online, targeting locks engaged. The Crimson Valkyrie responded instantly, years of dormancy falling away like shed skin. The ship remembered what it was built for. It remembered war. Echo protocol active, Dane said quietly, initiating the combat AI subroutine that had carried them through the darkest battles of the border wars. Prepare for hostile engagement. The ship's lights shifted from pale blue to deep crimson. Battle stations, though there was no crew left to man them. Just Dane and the ship and the cold mathematics of violence. The Catherine vessel accelerated, no longer bothering with pretense. Its forward cannons charged with an energy signature that made the Valkyrie's sensors scream warnings. They were going to fire. They were going to try to cripple his ship. Board it and take everything. Dane smiled, and it was not a kind expression. Let them come, he whispered, and then he launched the first salvo. The vacuum of space swallowed the sound of destruction, but Dane felt it in his bones as the Crimson Valkyrie unleashed hell. Twin railgun rounds tore through the darkness at relativistic speeds, each projectile carrying enough kinetic energy to crack a moon in half. The Catherine vessel twisted with impossible grace, its biomechanical systems responding faster than any purely technological ship could manage. One round missed by mere meters. The other struck a glancing blow against the alien ship's starboard flank, sending a cascade of sparks and venting atmosphere spiraling into the void. But the Catherine didn't retreat. Instead, they returned fire. The incoming barrage lit up Dane's tactical display like a constellation of death. Plasma bolts, each one a miniature sun contained in magnetic fields, streaked toward the Valkyrie. Dane's hands moved without conscious thought, decades of combat training overriding the rust of isolation. The ship banked hard, maneuvering thrusters firing in precise bursts, but one bolt clipped the aft shields. The impact sent a shudder through the hull that rattled Dane's teeth. Shield integrity at 68%, the ship's AI announced in its emotionless tone. Hull breach detected Section 7 Delta, automated sealing in progress. Dane ignored the damage report. Pain was just information, and right now he needed to focus on survival. The Catherine ship was circling, trying to flank him, using the debris field from a nearby shattered asteroid as cover. Smart, tactical. These weren't the same Catherine raiders that humanity had fought 5 years ago. These were veterans, survivors who had learned from their defeats just as Dane had learned from his. He deployed a spread of micro-missiles, small and fast, designed to overwhelm point defense systems. They spiraled out from the Valkyrie like angry hornets, each one tracking the heat signature of the alien vessel. The Catherine responded with a pulse of electromagnetic energy that fried half the missiles mid-flight, but the others pressed on, weaving through the countermeasures with stubborn determination. 3 impacts, small victories, but victories nonetheless. The Catherine ship's shields flared and buckled, and for a moment Dane saw the bare hull beneath, vulnerable and exposed. He didn't hesitate. The main plasma cannon, a weapon that drew so much power the rest of the ship dimmed when it fired, came online with a deep thrumming vibration. The targeting computer painted a red circle over the damaged section of the enemy ship. Lock confirmed. Firing solution optimal. Dane's finger hovered over the trigger and then he saw them. More ships, decloaking from the shadow of a gas giant at the edge of the system. 1, 2, 5, 8. A full Catherine hunting pack, each vessel bristling with weapons, each one moving with coordinated precision that spoke of a unified command structure. They had been waiting, watching, letting their scout test the human ship's capabilities before committing to a full assault. Dane's blood went cold. Multiple hostile contacts. The AI confirmed. Threat assessment critical. Recommendation immediate withdrawal, but there was nowhere to run. His jump drive needed time to charge, time he didn't have. The nearest cover was 3 million kilometers away, a journey that would leave him exposed to sustained fire from 9 separate warships. The mathematics were simple and brutal. He was going to die here. The thought settled over him with strange calm. Perhaps this was always how it would end, not in glory, Not surrounded by comrades, but alone in the dark, making a final stand that no one would ever know about. The galaxy would spin on, indifferent to the last gasp of one stubborn human who refused to kneel. The lead Kethran vessel opened a new communication channel. This time the voice was different. Deeper, resonant with authority and something that might have been respect. Human warrior, you fight well for one who stands alone. Your ship is formidable, your skill undeniable. But you are one against many. This ends only one way, Dane's jaw clenched. Then come and finish it. I won't make it easy. A pause. Then unexpectedly, why do you resist? Your species abandoned you. We monitored your transmissions. You have received no orders, no support, no acknowledgement of your existence for 6 cycles. You owe them nothing. The words struck deeper than any plasma bolt could, because they were true. Earth Command had gone silent. The colonies had stopped responding, and Dane had heard nothing but static and the echoes of his own voice for years. He was a ghost piloting a ghost ship in a galaxy that had moved on without him. Because someone has to remember what we fought for, Dane said quietly. Someone has to stand where the line was drawn and say no further. Even if no one's watching, even if no one cares. Silence stretched across the communication channel. Dane used the pause to cycle through his remaining options. Ammunition reserves were at 40%. Shield generators could handle maybe 3 more sustained assaults before failing. Life support would last months, but that was irrelevant if the hull was breached. He had one trump card left, a weapon system that the Kethran had never encountered, but using it meant certain death for everyone involved. The experimental antimatter warhead, installed during the final desperate months of the war, sat in its reinforced containment chamber deep in the Valkyrie's core. One shot, no margin for error. The blast radius would consume everything within 200,000 kilometers, including his own ship. A mutual kill. A Pyrrhic victory, but a victory nonetheless. Your words carry the weight of honor, the Kethran commander said finally. This is rare among your species. Most humans we have encountered value survival above principle. They beg, they bargain, they offer information in exchange for mercy. A clicking sound, perhaps their equivalent of a bitter laugh. You offer only defiance. This interests us, Dane frowned. What are you saying? I am saying that perhaps the Perseus Accord failed not because of dishonor, but because neither side truly understood the other. You see us as monsters who glass worlds. We see you as conquerors who spread like plague across the stars, consuming everything in your path. Both perspectives hold truth. Both are incomplete. The Kethran formation shifted but not into attack positions. Instead, they spread out, creating distance between vessels, a tactical posture that suggested defense rather than assault. We came here hunting human refugees, the commander continued, scattered survivors who fled into neutral space after your command structure collapsed. Some surrender peacefully, others fight and die. But you are different. You do not flee, yet you do not attack with the fury of desperation. You fight like one who has already accepted death and found peace in it. This marks you as dangerous, but also as one who might understand what we propose. Dane's finger remained near the weapons console, suspicion warring with curiosity. And what exactly do you propose? Information. We tell you why your command went silent. You tell us what you know of Project Widow. The name hit Dane like a physical blow. Project Widow. He had heard whispers of it during the final days of the war, classified operations that even command-level officers weren't cleared to discuss. Rumors of human experimentation, of attempts to create weapons that violated every ethical boundary humanity claimed to uphold. He had dismissed it as propaganda, the kind of lies enemies told about each other to justify atrocities. But the way the Kethran commander spoke the name, with reverence and horror intertwined, suggested it was far more than rumor. I don't know anything about Widow, Dane said carefully, perhaps not consciously, but your ship's designation appears in classified files we recovered from a destroyed human facility. The Crimson Valkyrie was present at Centis Prime, the birthplace of Widow, 2 months before the project was allegedly terminated. You were there, Captain Prescott. Your memory may have been suppressed, but the data remains. Dane's mind reeled. Centis Prime. He remembered that mission, remembered the orbital bombardment support his ship had provided, remembered the ground teams reporting successful extraction of research personnel, but the details were hazy, fragmented, like trying to recall a dream that slipped away upon waking. Had they done something to him? Erased parts of his memory to protect classified secrets? If I help you, Dane said slowly. What guarantee do I have that you won't simply kill me afterward? None, the Kethran admitted. But consider this. We are both survivors of a war neither side won. We are both seeking answers in a galaxy that has moved beyond us. Perhaps the enemy is not each other, but those who used us as weapons and then discarded us when we were no longer convenient. The communication ended, leaving Dane alone with his thoughts and the weight of an impossible choice. Dane stared at the tactical display, watching the 8 Kethran warships hold their formation like predators circling wounded prey. Every instinct screamed at him to fire, to take as many of them with him as possible before the inevitable end. But something in the commander's words had planted a seed of doubt, and doubt was a luxury he hadn't allowed himself in years. His fingers moved across the console, pulling up archived mission logs from Centus Prime. The data was there, timestamps and coordinates confirming his ship's presence, but the operational details were redacted, entire sections blanked out by security protocols he didn't have clearance to bypass. Strange, considering he had been there, had lived through whatever happened on that forsaken rock. Why would command erase a captain's memory of his own mission? The question gnawed at him like acid. Dane had always prided himself on his clarity, his ability to see through the fog of war and make decisions based on truth rather than propaganda. But what if his entire understanding of the conflict had been built on lies? What if the real enemy wasn't the aliens who had glassed human colonies, but the system that had sent him to die protecting secrets he wasn't allowed to know? He opened a communication channel, directing it toward the lead Kethran vessel. I'm listening, but we do this face-to-face on neutral ground. You send a shuttle with no more than 2 occupants. I'll meet you halfway between our ships unarmed. The response came quickly. Agreed, we will arrive in 20 minutes. Use this time to prepare yourself, Captain. What you learn may change everything you believe about this war. The channel closed. Dane stood slowly, his joints protesting after hours in the command chair. He moved through the empty corridors of the Crimson Valkyrie, past crew quarters that would never be filled again, past the medical bay where Dr. Osi had fought impossible battles, past the recreation room where his people had shared stories and laughter in the brief moments between horror. Ghosts walked these halls, memories made flesh by loneliness and grief. He stopped at the armory, staring at the rows of weapons that hung like silent judgment. The terms were unarmed, but Dane wasn't a fool. He selected a compact plasma pistol, small enough to conceal, powerful enough to matter if things went wrong. Trust was a luxury reserved for people who hadn't watched their entire world crumble. The shuttle bay doors opened with a mechanical groan. Dane cycled through the airlock and stepped into his personal transport, a small craft designed for reconnaissance and emergency evacuation. The engines hummed to life, and he guided the shuttle away from the Valkyrie, toward the coordinates the Kethran had transmitted. Space stretched around him, infinite and indifferent. He had spent 6 years drifting through this emptiness, convincing himself that solitude was strength, that needing nothing meant he couldn't be hurt again. But sitting here, moving toward an encounter that might end with a knife in his back or a bullet through his skull, Dane realized how desperately he wanted answers, how badly he needed to understand why everything he had loved had been torn away. The Kethran shuttle appeared on his sensors, approaching from the opposite direction. It was smaller than he expected, sleek and organic in design, like a living creature adapted for the vacuum. The 2 craft met at the designated coordinates, matching velocity and orientation. Dane activated his suit's mag boots and opened the airlock. The Kethran did the same. They met in the space between ships, 2 figures suspended in the void, tethered only by thin cables and the fragile hope that this wouldn't end in violence. The Kethran commander was tall, easily 7 feet, with armor that seemed to grow from their skin rather than cover it. Their face was hidden behind a helmet, but Dane could see eyes through the visor, multifaceted and gleaming with an intelligence that was disturbingly human. A second Kethran floated beside the commander, smaller and carrying what looked like a data storage device. Captain Prescott, the commander's voice came through the suit radio, still filtered but clearer now. I am War Leader Threnix of the Second Fleet. This is Scholar Veska, keeper of recovered human archives. We appreciate your courage in meeting us. Dane's hand stayed near his concealed weapon. You said you know why Earth Command went silent. I want that information first. Threnix gestured to Veska, who activated the storage device. A holographic display materialized between them, showing star charts and fleet movements. 3 years ago, your High Command discovered something in the galactic core. An artificial structure, predating both our species by millions of years. They sent a research fleet to investigate, pulling resources from every sector, including this one. That is why your communications ceased. Not abandonment, but redeployment. Dane's breath caught. That's impossible. A discovery that significant would have been broadcast across all channels. Unless they found something that terrified them. Veska spoke for the first time, voice softer, almost gentle. The last transmission we intercepted spoke of a consciousness, something vast and ancient, something that considered both humans and Kethrans to be little more than bacteria in its domain. Your command wanted to study it, to weaponize it, but they lost control. The hologram shifted, showing scattered debris fields, ships torn apart not by weapons, but by something else, something that had pulled them apart molecule by molecule. Dane felt sick. Project Widow was the contingency, Thranix continued. A weapon designed to fight not aliens, but entities beyond our comprehension. They tested it on your own people, Captain. On prisoners, on dissidents, on anyone they deemed expendable. They mapped human suffering because they needed to create an intelligence that could inflict pain on a cosmic scale. Dane wanted to deny it, to call them liars, but the evidence hung in the space between them like an accusation. His ship had been at Centus Prime. He had been part of it even if he couldn't remember. Why tell me this? His voice was hollow. Why not just let me die believing in something? Because we need allies, Veska said. The entity your command awakened is spreading. It has consumed 17 star systems in Kethran space, hundreds of billions of lives. It will reach human territory within 2 years. When it does, every petty conflict between our species will be meaningless. We will all become fuel for something that views consciousness itself as an infection to be purged. Dane looked at the data, at the projections showing the entity's expansion, at the cold mathematics of extinction, everything he had fought for, everyone he had lost, all of it rendered meaningless by something so vast it made their war look like children fighting over toys in a burning house. What do you need from me? The words felt like surrender, but also like the first honest thing he had said in years. Your ship still has the access codes to human military networks, Thranix said. Codes that might let us reach the scattered human fleets. Warn them. Coordinate a defense before it's too late. We cannot do this alone, neither can you. But together, we might survive. Dane thought of his crew, of their faces in those final moments, of the promises he had made to bring them home. He had failed them then, but maybe, just maybe, he could honor their memory by ensuring their deaths meant something more than another casualty in a pointless war. He reached out his hand, a human gesture that the Kethran probably didn't understand but might recognize as significant. Then let's save what's left of this galaxy, Dane said. Together. Thranix regarded the outstretched hand for a moment, then reached out and clasped it. The grip was strong, the armor warm despite the cold of space. And in that moment, suspended between stars, 2 old enemies became something new. Not friends perhaps, not yet, but survivors who finally understood that some threats were too vast to face alone, that pride and hatred were luxuries neither species could afford anymore. The war wasn't over. It had simply found its true enemy. And for the first time in 6 years, Captain Dane Prescott felt something he thought had died with his crew. Hope.